So the one last thing in terms of modeling is to create a bolts all around the scene to give this that little special touch and create some clusters of little details that will further refine this into a more complex composition and scene. So again, I will hold Z and toggle the overlays. And first of all, we'll need to create the bolts. So hold Shift S and snap cursor toward origin. And now we can disable the main collection. So we have a clear scene here, and let's press Shift A and add a circle. And I want to modify this to 16 segments, and we can zoom in a little bit. Now let's tab in, go to the vertex select so we can see our segments, and I want to scale this to 0.1, so S.1. So we are creating a really small bolt. We can further zoom in or press period on a numpad. And now we can press F to fill this, extrude a little bit like this, and I will bevel the top, so Ctrl B and bevel these 3 segments. Okay, and now I will go to the face select this top face, press I for inset, and inset just a tiny bit here, and now we can extrude inside. So E and extrude. Now let's inset once again, tiny bit, and we'll extrude this up to something like this, and additionally do 1 bevel. So Ctrl B and reduce the number of segments to 1 with the mouse wheel and release. So this will serve as our bolt. Now if we tab out, enable smooth shading, and go to the object data properties and enable auto smooth, and we can go for 45 degrees here, and this will be enough. I won't do any beveling there because this will be used as a really small bolt throughout the scene. So if you zoom out, this is just enough of detail. I think the 45 is too much here, so let's refine that to 35 degrees. So we have this nice visible bevel there. That's much better now. And right now let's call this object bolt, and we'll add a cylinder. So Shift A, add a cylinder, and let's add this to 16 segments as well. And let's scale this down, so S and scale it down, and we can toggle the wireframe and look from the side so we see what we are doing here. So let's scale this up a tiny bit like that, so it goes around the bolt and leaves some space there. And now select both of these objects, and let's go into the edit mode, select all, and press G then Z, and we'll grab this down so the origin point is at the top of the bolt, but not all the way. It can be like in the middle of this bevel here, so it goes a little over the surface. And now we can refine this cage by selecting the bottom vertices, press G then Z, and move it a little bit over the bottom of the bolt. So this will serve as our Boolean cage, and right now we can tab out and parent this object to the bolt, so Ctrl P and parent the object. So now we have only the bolt object here, and we can press M and move this to collection and enable the collection. So we have our bolt in the scene, we can select it. Now let's switch to solid view, and we'll go right here in the snapping options and enable face snapping, enable align rotation to target because we want to snap these to different surfaces and project individual elements. Now if you try to move this and hold Control, you will see it will snap to any surface. So, but let me move this up for a little bit. But it will take the Boolean cages into account as well. So if you try to snap it somewhere here, you will see it snapped on the top of the Boolean object. So we'll need to get rid of those. And that's why I created the bools collection in the beginning for some of these Boolean objects. And right now we can take time and just move all the Boolean objects to that collection so we can clean up the scene a little bit. Okay, I think that was the last of them. So it's better to have those in the separate collection so you can turn them off and on. You can see if you enable the collection, you have them back. And they're still parented to the object, don't worry about that, they're just in the different collection. So if you enable the Boolean collection and, for example, expand the door object here, you will see that these are parented. They're just marked with that dashed line, and basically it shows that they're in different collections, but you still have them available for that object and they will still move even if you disable the collection. So very useful thing to keep the scene tidy. And now we can select this bolt, but click once again to select the bolt inside. And now we can meet somewhere in place, and I want to add bolt above this separation on the door. So press G, then hold Ctrl and snap it to the door. We can maybe scale it down a little bit, and it's hard to see right now because that cage is a solid object. And of course we could go and switch this to wireframe and disable rendering and stuff like that, but remember, the Bool Tool add-on will do that for us, so we only have to do once and then duplicate the object with properly set up cage. So now that we snap this, we can select the cage, shift click the frame and press Ctrl-. And of course we need to select the cage, right click and shade smooth. Select the frame and fix the stack. So we won't get rid of this. It still can be a little bit tedious, and you can see it can break our scene a little bit, but now it's very easy to adjust. You can just select the bolt since this is parented, and you can scale it down, then press G, X, move it in place a little bit better, move it up and scale it down even further, and you will see how those bevel will get fixed. If they won't for some reason, you can always press R then Z twice and rotate this on its local Z axis to find better topology. And this is the way you can easily do all kinds of kit bashing with the booleans and modifiers. You can prepare all kinds of these little objects with their cages that you can later inset into your existing objects, and you can prepare a library of those. So anytime you're working on a project like this, you can just append some of these objects from a different scene and place them around and just do cutouts like this with the Boolean modifier, with the Bool Tool add-on, and create prototypes very quickly, sometimes in the matter of minutes. And we can duplicate this bolt all over the place and add some complexity to that scene, as we talked about. So I will select the bolt now, press Shift right bracket on the keyboard, so we select the cage as well, and we can press Alt D to duplicate linked, and then Z to move this down like this. And now select the cage, shift click the door frame, Ctrl-, fix the stack. Now I will select both of those. Let's look from the front, and again shift right bracket, Alt D, we'll press X and move this in place. And now we can select both at once, shift click the frame, Ctrl-, and just drag the bevel at the bottom. So now we have 4 bolts in a matter of seconds. And if we now disable the overlay, you can see this looks very nice. You have some added complexity there, you have some inset for the bolt, and this really adds up the final feeling of the scene. So now let me zoom out a little bit, and I will toggle the overlay again, and let's add some larger bolts to those pillars up here. I think it'll look great. So let me select one of them, shift right bracket, let's look from the front. Now I'll press Alt D and hold Ctrl to snap this right there. Select the bolt again and scale it up to something much larger. And now we can select this cage, shift click the ceiling object and Ctrl-, and again fix the stack. Let me check the result. This looks all fine. We can maybe make it even larger a little bit. And now I will duplicate these 2 other pillars. So one for the front view, shift right bracket, Alt D, X, and move this in place. And if you're doing kit bashing like this, of course, the modifier stack can become quite overwhelming. So for the future reference, if you're doing some really complex scene and you want to be able to modify it often, or you're doing this for a client and there's a probability of going back to that scene and doing some design changes based on client's feedback, you might want to name the Boolean object as well, and that way you would have proper names on those Boolean modifiers as well. So forgive me that this is a little bit untidy here, but at the same time, this is just for the demonstration purposes, just for the learning purposes. I want us to move quickly over this, but at the same time, I feel it's important to mention here that if you name every one of your objects, it will make the future adjustments of your scene much easier, but at the same time, it adds unnecessary complexity to the learning process we are going through right now. So we can continue now with those bolts. Shift right bracket, and I will look from the side here, press Alt D, Y, and hold Control, so it will nicely snap here with that rotation. Select the cage, ceiling object, Control minus. And I will go ahead now and place these bolts on different places throughout the scene. So you can sometimes pause and follow the placements I'm doing right here. I will be not commenting anymore because it will get really repetitive. Now you know everything you need to know to kit bash these bolts throughout the scene. So either do it yourself and find some placement that you really like, that you think would enhance the scene, or you can just scrub forward through this chapter to see where I place them and repeat after me. So it's all up to you, and now let's get to it.